Welcome to Genki Zone. Hey, if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, definitely go ahead and hit that button right now. Okay, let's jump straight into this explainer. Today we are exploring a place that is literally the ultimate Phoenix city. We're talking about Paris, France, a city that constantly burns, completely tears itself apart, and then somehow rebuilds itself even grander than before.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, from its very Celtic origins as a tiny fishing village, to the ancient Roman town of Lutetia, through the chaotic French Revolution, and all the way to the stunning Belle Époque. Kings build it up, revolutionaries tear it down, and visionaries just totally remake it. We're going to cover all of it, including its dark days of WWI occupation and its incredible liberation. It is just an unbelievable story of resilience, so let's get into it.
We've got a seriously action-packed itinerary for this historical journey. First up, origins, Celts to Romans. Then, medieval faith and intellect. Number 3, the French Revolution. 4, Haussmann's Grand Renovation. And finally, number 5, the brilliant Belle Époque.
All right, let's kick things off. Section 1, Origins, from the Celts to the Romans.
So, to really understand Paris, you have to appreciate the sheer scale of its transformation. I mean, we're talking about a place that started as just a humble river crossing. A Celtic tribe, the Parisii, settled there around 259 BC. They were basically fishermen just trying to survive, building these little mud huts on the Ile de la Cité, that small island right in the middle of the Seine River. Right, definitely not the glamorous city of light we picture today. But then, in 52 BC, Julius Caesar and the Romans show up. They conquer the settlement, it burns during the resistance, and the Romans just rebuild it with total efficiency. They called it Lutetia, which translates to, well, a marshy place. A bit of a downgrade in the name department, for sure. But the Romans did bring infrastructure, building amphitheaters and baths on the left bank. Fast forward a few centuries, the Roman Empire completely crumbles, and by 508 AD, King Clovis of the Franks makes it his capital. And that is when the city officially takes the name Paris, honoring that original Celtic tribe.
Okay, before we move on, I've got to ask you all a question. So back in 451 AD, Attila the Hun was marching his army straight for Paris. The residents were, understandably, absolutely terrified and ready to run for their lives. But this young woman named Genevieve somehow convinced them to stay and pray instead. And miraculously, Attila just changed course. She actually became the patron saint of Paris because of this. So, be honest, would you have stayed with Saint Genevieve to face the Huns, or would you have packed your bags and run? Tell us in the comments.
Moving right along to Section 2, medieval faith and intellect.
By the time we hit the 12th and 13th centuries, Paris had undeniably become this massive center of power, pulling in brilliant minds and serious money from all across Europe. The city had expanded way beyond that central island, and it created this fascinating kind of dual identity. On one hand, you've got absolute spiritual dominance. In 1163, they start building Notre Dame Cathedral.
Yeah, an audacious masterpiece of Gothic engineering. The flying buttresses, the staggering height, it took nearly 200 years to finish.
Exactly. But then, right across the river on the left bank, you have this rising intellectual dominance. The University of Paris takes shape in the early 1200s, and scholars are just flocking there to study theology and law. And here's a fun fact. That entire area became known as the Latin Quarter simply because the students and professors wandering the streets were all speaking Latin to each other. So you basically had faith ruling the island and intellect ruling the left bank.
But, Paris is, as our sources describe it perfectly, a city of firelight and fury. All those intellectual pursuits and deep religious devotions eventually give way to some explosive tensions. You had massive wealth inequality, widespread starvation, and an absolute monarchy that just wouldn't budge. They were basically building a giant powder keg, and by the late 18th century, that keg was completely primed to blow.
Which brings us to Section 3, the French Revolution.
So it's 1789, the working-class Parisians and the bourgeoisie have finally reached their breaking point, and this uprising, it didn't just rattle the old royal regime, it completely shattered it and fundamentally rewired the political landscape of the entire world. The whole thing kicks off on July 14th when a Parisian mob storms the Bastille, this massive, imposing royal fortress. But get this, when they actually broke inside, there were only 7 prisoners in the entire building.
7! Literally just 7 people. It wasn't some huge strategic military victory meant to free an army. It was 100% about the symbolism. The Bastille represented the absolute, unchecked, tyrannical power of the king. So bringing it down meant the people were physically taking the power back into their own hands.
So, we want to hear from you on this one. Do you think the Bastille's symbolic power as a monument of tyranny was actually more important than its actual strategic military value? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to read them.
Now, following the fall of the Bastille, things spiraled into absolute bloody chaos.
The monarchy was formally abolished in 1792, and under the Reign of Terror, which was spearheaded by Robespierre, the streets were literally running with blood. King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette were both executed.
Yeah, it was brutal. Thousands of people lost their heads to the guillotine right in the middle of the Place de la Concorde. And before their executions, so many of the condemned were held in these dark, damp, Gothic cells at the Conciergerie on the Ile de la Cité. But ultimately, the revolution ended up devouring its own leaders. Robespierre himself was sent to the guillotine in 1794, which finally brought the terror to an end.
Let's move to Section 4, Haussmann's Grand Renovation.
Okay, so following the revolution and the whole dramatic rise and fall of Napoleon Bonaparte, Paris was honestly still pretty much a crowded, unhealthy medieval maze. So in the 1850s, Emperor Napoleon III brings in this incredibly tough administrator named Baron Haussmann to just radically redesign the city from the ground up. And he was relentless. He demolished about 60% of medieval Paris to build his grand visions, like the Boulevard Ornano. He took these narrow, winding alleys and replaced them with these massive, wide, straight, tree-lined boulevards.
He really did, and while yes, it was definitely done to improve hygiene, air quality, and traffic flow, it also had a very strict military purpose. Think about it, wide boulevards are way harder for revolutionaries to barricade. Plus, it allowed troops and cavalry to easily march through and shut down any popular uprisings. It was basically breathtaking beauty and strict authoritarianism going hand in hand.
And life inside Haussmann's new uniform apartment buildings was super interesting. It's this fascinating look at what we call a vertical social mix in Paris, well before elevators changed the game.
Right. So the key is really looking at the floors. The wealthy bourgeois lived on the very spacious lower floors, the second floor being the absolute most desirable. But as you climb the stairs, the ceilings literally get lower and the residents get poorer. The working class and the artists were pushed all the way up into these cramped, freezing attics. You essentially had an entire cross-section of society stacked vertically inside a single building, like a social layer cake.
So Haussmann essentially gave us the beautiful, elegant Paris we all recognize today, but he completely destroyed historic, medieval neighborhoods and displaced thousands of working-class citizens to make it happen. Would you make that trade-off? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.
And that takes us to Section 5, the brilliant Belle Époque.
Following the Franco-Prussian War, Paris enters this period of just immense optimism and peace. It becomes the absolute golden age, widely known as the Belle Époque, literally the beautiful era. Paris reclaims its spot as the undisputed world capital of art, science, and technology. They started hosting these massive universal expositions that drew in tens of millions of visitors from around the globe.
The culture was just electric during this time. You had Impressionist painters like Monet and Renoir completely changing the art world, capturing light in entirely new ways. Over in entertainment, in 1895, the Lumiere brothers held the very first public projection of a motion picture right here in Paris. And technologically, the city debuted the sprawling Paris Metro in 1900, complete with those iconic, gorgeous Art Nouveau entrances. It totally revolutionized how Parisians navigated their city.
But surprisingly, the most defining monument of the Belle Époque started out as a massive controversy. When the Eiffel Tower was built for the 1889 World's Fair, a lot of traditional Parisians absolutely hated it.
No way, they really did? They were writing letters to the editor calling it a metal monstrosity, a total eyesore, ruining the skyline. But, it very quickly became the ultimate symbol of human ambition and modernity, reaching high into the sky, towering over even the great Cathedral of Notre Dame. It was the ultimate flex, showing a city completely unafraid of the future.
So, as our timeline approaches the eve of World War I, which would tragically bring this beautiful era to a close, we have one final question for you. Out of everything we've just covered, what is your absolute favorite era of Parisian history? Are you a fan of the ancient Roman Lutetia, the Gothic medieval period, or the dazzling Belle Époque? Let us know in the comments.
To wrap up this explainer, this quote perfectly summarizes the spirit of this magnificent city. It's been conquered, burned, occupied, and torn apart, but it always rebuilds, it always survives. And that held incredibly true even beyond our timeline today, as the city moved into the utter darkness of World War II occupation and eventually the triumphant liberation of the city.
Exactly. The Phoenix City has these incredible layers of history just hidden in plain sight, from ancient Celtic ruins all the way to grand modern boulevards. We really hope this explainer encourages you to keep exploring all those layers for yourself. So I'll leave you with this final thought. What modern city today do you think has the same resilient, unbreakable spirit as Paris? Let us know, and we will see you next time.